podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chrys Johnson. Palpable.
Yo.
How are you, brother?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. How's it been going out there? Where are you living now?
I'm up north in Chico, California. It's my hometown area.
Yeah, because you moved away from there for a little bit. You went to LA for a while, right?
Yeah, well, I was in the Bay Area like for a long time after Seattle and Ampeg and all that stuff. I think I met you back then, right? Like when I was still at Ampeg.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if you were on the tail end of doing the EMG thing or.
Oh, yeah, it was EMG. It was EMG. That's right. Because we got to hang out in Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like it's been forever since not just seeing you, but like a lot of people.
Yeah. 100%, man. I mean, there's so many things going on, and everybody has their career goals. Everybody has their hustle and their home life, their relationships and everything. And then like touring comes to a halt, and it's like, that's how we saw each other. Like was when people came through on tour, and NAMM's not the thing. That's the other place that we saw each other, So
That's a big part of it. Yeah, I realize that like the NAMM and it's just such a big part of all our hangs because we're lucky enough to have like social jobs. So I realized that without that, I don't hang out much.
Yeah, well, because you're probably hustling, doing your craft, man.
All the time.
Where are you in Texas still? Did you come out to Cali? Because we were in Cali for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm back and forth all the time. I got family in OC, so I'm able to, go back and forth as needed, which is really like one of the only ways I was able to make this work, So,
you still see Roberta?
Yeah, all the time. That's what I'm talking about. When I always say family, but just family, friends. Yeah. So
she is family.
Yeah, to me she is. So I forgot that's how I even know you. So yeah, that's it. I stay with her, and obviously since then I made a lot of friends around the area, so I'll just stay with friends and stuff, and I'm there as much as I need to be. And
cool, yeah. Big thanks to Roberta for connecting us. That's so cool.
Yeah, she's the best, man, and she and John have been a huge part of me. Like I said, being able to kind of like grow my platform over the years. Because when I met you, I was kind of first getting into expanding out of Texas and trying to do it,
Man, well, congratulations. I love before I even say that, I love what you put in your stories this morning or today in the last 24 hours. It's like everybody says congratulations when you get pregnant, but they don't know how many times you got fucked, to get there. So I'm sure it's not an overnight success. You've worked really hard for a long time to be where you're at.
Yeah.
I'm just saying congratulations. I've seen a big chunk of it. So,
You were the step of it. Cause when I met you, I won that Steve Vai contest, that Guitar Center contest. And that was huge for me. That was like this can happen, like things I can actually, do this. And I think I got into those contest things because I won several of them. And I think that was kind of the right time because after that, everybody started figuring out how to use bots and things to get their votes. And it just it became, it lost legitimacy.
Sure. Yeah.
A flash in the pan, like those internet contests were really big for a second and then it just went away.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to kind of manipulate stuff online, right? So like it can be difficult to know what's real there.
Yeah, because there were like, people that were horrible, and I don't mean to talk trash, but then they had like 1 million votes. Like, yeah, probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, probably not. Man, well, dude, like there's so let me just recap. So like when I got to see you out in Austin, like you were playing to your own backing tracks and like slaying like that situation, and then you won some contests, right? And then it was like shortly after there, I felt like you got a gig with Orianthi. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I'd always done my own thing, and I've always told everybody that regardless of if that becomes my main job or if it just goes alongside, it's always good to have your own creative outlet because sometimes in the job you make money at, you can't always do your thing.
Right.
But yeah, I like I said, I started entering those internet contests, and that was how I met Ori because Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics was the one who put that contest together. So I ended up winning that, and I guess the idea was, you want me to kind of tell the quick of the story how that happened?
Sure, please.
So basically, the idea was that they were going to do this contest called Be My Band, and they were going to take X artists, in this case Orianthi, and put musicians with her from around the world and play a concert and see how it goes, right? So they took me from Texas, a drummer from Brazil, a keyboardist from Italy, bass player from Luxembourg. Everybody's from all over. And Ori's Australian, you know. So it was really interesting to see that how music is the same in any language. There was a lot of, language barriers. Not everybody spoke fluent English. So when it came together, we were like, wow, it really just worked. Unfortunately, that didn't work for reality TV, which was the idea of the thing. It was supposed to be a pilot for a reality TV show, and there was no drama, so it didn't work. Everybody got along too well. But I did this one show with Ori and with Dave Stewart and also Richie Sambora at the Troubadour, and it was very much like, thank you very much, excellent job, good luck to you. Like, oh, okay. But then, like a couple weeks later, I was at South by Southwest where you and I had been hanging out, and I got a call from Dave's assistant. Hey, Dave really liked you. Would you want to come play guitar for him? I'm like, yeah. So I shot off to LA, and I played for Dave for a couple of years, and he started, slowing things down a little bit. And Whitney, my wife, who she noticed that Ori's very involved in her own social media. So she was like, why don't you just message her and, just say hi? Okay. So I just shot her a DM like, hey, keep me in the loop if you need a guitar player, step back, keep it light. She called me the next day and she says, hey, yeah, I know, like the next day. It's just like the guitar player I've had forever. His family has like a dentistry practice and he's going to go to school to be a dentist. So you're in. Okay.
Wow.
That was it. And I've played with her since. And that was like 2015 or something. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I had it flipped. I was thinking that Dave Stewart came afterward, but he was kind of the catalyst and the bridge to Ori and all that because of the contest. That's so cool, man.
Like, he introduced me to her, but then I played with him and then came back to playing with her.
Right. Yeah. And Dave in his own right is such a legend and cool through the whole Eurythmics and Annie Lennox, everything, all that history to go out. And I remember seeing so many photos from you guys being on tour, and the stage set and the theatrics seem to be really high on that particular tour. Am I right with that?
Dave is a super creative guy. Like he'll set out to do 20 different things, which is more than most people do at a time, and he'll end up doing 40. He's just a creative, the ringmaster is what we used to call him. He's like he knows how to reel in a bunch of talent and do all these cool things with them. And he's a great facilitator and a very wise man. When Dave would start to talk, it's almost like everybody would take a knee and listen, because some wisdom's going to come out, and he would never speak up like loudly. He'd always he'd start to speak very calm, and everyone, okay, listen up. It was really funny. So he was always,
man, that's you've been blessed by a master in that sense, right? Like you had somebody kind of help guide the way in a way. Like so you get some of these people that you get to work with. Like I think that's the great thing about getting a gig, other than the obvious qualities of like, oh, I'm playing with somebody famous that's got like a great history and a great catalog and all that stuff, but then to take a knee with them and go, be all ears, like tell me what's up, like let's get it done right. Yeah.
Which, I think it's kind of cool that in some ways, I didn't start doing these like bigger gigs and stuff until I was old enough to appreciate that. Because when I was like 21 and I was playing in rap metal bands and, and partying real hard, like you weren't going to tell me anything, who you were. I was like, yeah. But at that point when I met Dave, it was very humbling, and I knew how to listen up and how to learn, not just from what he would say, but just from the experience, just by taking it in and, stop and smell the roses, so to speak, right?
Yeah. And so you've been doing you're still part of the Ori's band, right? At this point?
Yeah, still working with Ori. I love her to death. She's every bit as nice as you'd hope she'd be. Had you met her? Do you know her at all?
In passing at a NAMM show, but I don't know her,
Yeah.
I would love to meet her someday. That'd be great.
Yeah. No, she's like always looking out for everybody and make sure everybody's okay. And she's super sweetheart. And that's, sometimes that's hard to find in our business. And
big time.
Yeah. So I still work with her, and everybody I've worked with, on and off through the years, she's always been a constant, and mostly because we developed a friendship, like we get along really well, and that's nice. It's nice to have that.
Yeah, it's nothing like having a good boss and somebody that you can look up to, that looks out for you, and has a sense of you as a person in mind as they're working with you, not just, oh, he's a guitar player. Yep, you stand over there, and out off stage, you don't have any connection. That's probably the worst kind of gig, I'd imagine at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I always say like any job can be cool or suck. It's really about the people you're working with. Like you might be, hustling boxes at UPS, but if the guys you work with are really cool, like this isn't so bad. But then you might be on stage in arenas, but then as soon as you get off stage, your boss or whoever's like yelling and throwing things, you're like, this sucks.
Yeah, yeah, that's the truth, man. Well, I'm interested in knowing, like, because you just got this gig with Tommy Vext. That's freaking a big deal too, and so you're able to rock two gigs. I don't know how active Ori is at the moment, but Tommy's seems to be pretty active, and like you guys are hitting the road like fairly often. You're going out again soon, right?
Yeah, yeah, like starting in July all the way through most of the summer. And the way I'm hearing it is we're booked pretty much the rest of the year. So it's funny because, we went for a while without touring and working. So we thought it would gradually build back up. But then I got this call from Tommy and it was just like, okay, go. So we just took,
Wow.
and yeah, I've been busy and, playing with multiple artists. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm blessed to have that option, so hopefully things line up to where I can do things with Ori and Tommy and just keep it going. But right now, yeah, it's looking good, man. And it's funny how you don't realize sometimes, our business is very much word of mouth and networking and connections that you make in the past that you didn't see coming back. So I met Tommy, like I think it's 2018. I was touring with Diamante and we were opening for Bad Wolves. And I guess at the time I didn't realize it, but at the time I was sort of auditioning for Tommy, just because he remembered me from that, and we've toured together a few times. So he was like, "Oh yeah, Neil's great," so it worked out.
That's awesome. So I think it's interesting because there's so much going on, like around. Like I just talked to Kyle with Bad Wolves, and like they're working on redoing things over on that side, and there seems to be some controversy, with Tommy in that situation. I don't really know the details because nobody wants to talk about it, but there obviously is like a political divide or something there. I think it seems like, and I'm just curious, like, is that? I mean, it seems like you fit in fine with Tommy, so you kind of have similar beliefs, similar feelings around things, and is that kind of why you guys are friends and it's worked out, or?
Yeah, it's interesting because I know the Bad Wolves guys like the rest of the band. I always really liked those guys, like Tommy, and whatever happened between them, that's none of my business. I just I got a call. Tommy and I get along pretty well, and I think the thing with him is he's got a lot of really strong beliefs and strong personality, and whether I believe in everything he's about or not, I think we come together on enough points to where like we really get along well on those things, and he's controversial. Like he's a controversial rock star. Imagine that, right? It's just like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
fine
yeah.
of what he does. So as long as it's working and he we're respectful to each other, then and I think I've done enough gigs as let's call it a hired gun, where I've played with different people as a sort of a contract guy or whatever. I'm not like an official band member. That I know my role. I don't try to push too hard. I get in where I fit in, and I don't I'll push as far as I can, but without overstepping. I found a good balance with that, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but it works for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but I found my place in this, and I haven't talked to the Bad Wolves guys much since I started playing with Tommy. So I don't think there's any ill will from them. I think they understand I'm a guy doing a gig, but whatever's going on between him and the guys, hopefully they get it sorted out soon, and we can all keep moving. Because I know we all want to do the same thing. We all just want to play music. So.
Right. Yeah, and I see that. I don't. I love that the guys. I mean, the bit that I've talked to the Bad Wolves guys, they like refuse to badmouth the situation. They refuse to like get involved with it. They're just like, I don't have any not gonna even plead the fifth, you know, because like we wish him well, like that's cool, whatever, you know. And so I'm like, okay, cool. And I think your stance makes a lot of sense, you know, especially as a hired gun, as you say, you know, you're a consummate professional, you always have been, and that's part of what your secret to success, so to speak, you know. And it's and you kind of put it right, I think, because that's kind of how I read it too. It's like, I think, yeah, you know, outside of whatever details around Tommy's beliefs politically or whatever, I think that he's onto something with just being a bit of a shock rock polarizing person, because when you have strong beliefs, then it makes people think, you know. And I think that that's actually, you know, it's a tactic, whether he's doing it intentionally or not. It's something that is a part of who he is and how he performs and how he presents himself to the world. And so that creates an emotional response, you know, either way, you know.
Yeah,
So it's cool. It's cool that you get to join in and be a part of this.
it is. And I think you're every bit right. If he was mild mannered, that wouldn't be very entertaining, would it? It's like, you
No.
know, yeah. So, I fully expected that when signing up to work with him. Like, this guy's a big personality, strong beliefs. But part of why it works, and you'll get this because we've talked about this many times, growing up listening to Pantera, being big Pantera fans, like the best band ever, right? And Phil
Mm.
Anselmo always had strong opinions and strong beliefs. And of course, you don't agree with everything he's about, but man, he believed it. And it just made you like, man, okay, let's go, Like I'm not really into that, but I love the energy. And Tommy's a lot like that. He's got so much energy and so much conviction for what he's about that I'm behind it, and if it rubs people the wrong way, to some people, I'm fine with that, because you're not going to make all the people happy all the time. It's just, how it is.
That's the truth. And I'm with you on that. Like it's interesting later in life to reflect, and especially in the now, on my love for Pantera. I'll never give them up. You know, like they're my favorite. They're like one of the all-time favorite bands. It's like Dimebag and Steve Vai raised me. You know, like, so that's just the way it is. But at the same time, you know, like looking back as time has gone and how society has shifted, and kind of you look back and you're like, oh, it's a different, I see this whole thing with a different filter, you know, than I did before. It doesn't really change my emotional content, because it is what it is, but the adult, more evolved me goes, interesting, I wonder if I would get into this now, you know, if it were presented to me right now as brand new, would it be my thing, you know? Like, or was that like, it's like a nostalgic time based thing, you know, when you were 16 and really mad at your dad, you know, like that's when it, like, Pantera was off the hook, you know. I needed that anger, you know. I don't know, but
Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, it's funny how music often say is the soundtrack to our lives, right? And there's something for every part of it. And yeah, I mean, nothing resonates with you like the things you first remember hearing that made you feel a certain way at a certain time. So yeah, I mean, I listen to newer bands, and I think this comes with being, getting older and stuff. You listen to bands, and I keep relating it back to, oh, that sounds like Pantera or something. So you always go back to those things because those are the first impressions you had of that. So I don't know. That's a good point. I think I like to think if Pantera just came out today, I'd be super into it, but I don't know.
yeah, I mean, there'd be no denying that we'd all be fans of Dime and the whole thing. I think it's the kind of the nature of, like, what you were describing with Tommy and Phil, like the polarizing opinions part, right? I think it's that part of it that the musical part, man, all day, Vinnie, Paul, Rex Brown, and Dimebag, like all day long. I will never give it up. Like it's in my blood. But yeah, and I was, and I'm not even like saying anything bad about Phil at this point, because I've hung out with Phil a handful of times, and he has been so good and so gracious to me, and everyone around, you know, like, and I'm sure Tommy is too. I'm sure he's a great dude in person. But they like to say little things, and people get all, oh, that's it, you know. I'm giving it up, you know, like you can't talk like that in the modern PC world. And it's like, okay. So yeah, it is what it is. But I do understand the kind of the strong personality, and it kind of standing for something, or, you know, falling for anything type of thing. You know, there's kind of a little bit of that vibe in both of them. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's something about metal. I mean, I think regardless of what genre Tommy could have been in musically, uh, being more of like a hard rock and metal artist, I think really lends itself to that type of strong opinions and against the norm and being like not caring what people think. The not giving a fuck. I think that's a really strong part of what metal's about overall. So whether we all agree on the same subject, I love the attitude.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I think, and what I will say is because like one of the main polarizing things is like vaccines, right? Like that's one of the things that comes up, right? And um, people ask me about it relatively often. My friends like, "Hey, you getting vaccinated?" I'm like, "Hey, I'm not getting it right away. Like, I'm happy that you're getting it." Um, and they're like, "Well, why wouldn't you get it right away?" And then they want to get into a conversation about it. I'm like, "Hey, I'm not trying to like give you, 20 questions about why you got it, and because I'm not anti-vax, but because it's done a lot of good for society and for human history, right? But I understand why people would have hesitancy in this day and age under the circumstances. So I can't fault anyone for making a decision for themselves and what's best for them and their family. Um, so it's I think that having somebody like Tommy speak up about it at least makes people think, right? And I think that if nothing else, well, no matter what side you're on, I'm like, hey, thanks for questioning the most common narrative, so that some people can try and think for themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, because at the end of the day, that's all you can really think for. And it's like I can't force other people to think how I think, but I can control how I feel and make my own decisions. And that's what he's promoting. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's yeah, and I can get behind that.
Yeah.
So dude, I have to almost kind of apologize. I just now realized that you're doing this story of Roe. Can you tell me about this? Because I listened to the 4 tracks that are out, and I assume that this must be like, is this a whole album that you're releasing? And
It
tell me
may
more about it.
Right. Okay. So basically the idea when I was a kid, I had I don't want to date myself too much, but we had a Spider-Man vinyl record. Right. It was like an action comic album that you'd open it up and inside the vinyl, they always had like all the liner notes and cool stuff. So they had a Spider-Man comic inside it. When you'd open it up, you could put on the record and listen along as you were reading the comic, and it would have like voice actors, and it was like listening to a comic. So I'll get you, Spider-Man. Not today, Green Goblin. And then it'd go into a song, Spider-Man, Spider-Man. And it was really corny. But as a kid, I was like, this is awesome. And that always kind of stuck with me. And I don't remember hearing anything else like it since then. Maybe the idea just didn't catch or whatever. But, doing the type of music I've done personally, like my own stuff, has been largely instrumental rock, a lot of guitar playing, and that appeals to musicians. But I thought, maybe if I did something that was more inclusive, think bigger, in terms of like a story that could get people involved. And that's what I did. I wrote this whole sci-fi story called Story of Roe, and it's about this young man that has a like a robotic arm, and it's based in the future where everybody's getting these really crazy robotic implants, and the company that builds them say, oh, it's fun, they're great, but then they have this side effect where people start going crazy from them, and it creates a lot of turmoil. So in some ways a little bit like not too far off from it's a skewed reality, but it could happen. So
Well, that's what I was gonna lead into, was that as I was listening to it, there was these parallels to like people's concerns about vaccine and stuff that we're dealing with now. And I was like, whoa, did you write this during the pandemic or prior, or like, tell me about that part of it.
I started this album in like February of 2020. So right before they started saying, hey, there's something going around, let's all stay home. So it was right before the pandemic happened. I was writing the script. And then as things started unfolding, after I'd finished it, I was like, this is crazy. Like, it's really, it's like being from Texas, like myself, and watching King of the Hill. Like, it's funny to a lot of people, but they're like, close to home. I know those guys. Like I know people just like that. So it kind of started happening in a weird way. And yeah, kind of interesting. But the end result ended up being something that I felt like was very entertaining and more than just a guitar player way. The way the story goes in and out of the songs, and Whether it catches on and goes to be some big thing, I don't know. It still might, but in the meantime, it was a passion project that I'm very proud of. I think it's probably the coolest thing I've done on my own.
I like it a lot. So how many more parts are there, or is it just 4 parts?
So for now, I've done the 4 parts, and I think I'm kind of gonna wait and see what I end up doing with it, like because I put out a comic book that went along with it. I forgot to mention that, kind of like the Spider-Man thing. So you can listen to the whole album, you can read along with the comic book, and I think I'm gonna start trying to market it into some different ways than you might do a regular album. Of course, try to promote on the socials and everything, but maybe there's room for me in the Comic-Con world or like the anime world. Like those are huge crowds that are super into fantasy and sci-fi culture. And I feel like metal kind of coincides with that in a lot of ways. Like we grew up listening to like Maiden and Dio, and it's about dragons and wizards and all this crap, right? So in a way, I feel like that comic world and like Marvel and DC movies are so popular now, and then metal, it all came together for me. So I think I want to start trying to let those people know about this, and it could be a thing, if they feel it, I'm feeling it. Let's go. I'll write more of them.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. Now tell me, are you an artist? Did you draw the comic book as well, or did you hire somebody to do the comic book?
We hired a friend to do it. So Whitney, again, my wife, her company, True Lion, she does a lot of like web design and social media management and printing merch for bands and venues and restaurants and all kinds of things. So she's like an all-inclusive creative hub. So and marketing and everything. So her graphic design team, like they're like, hey, this is really cool. Can we do this? But yeah, let's keep it in house. So they jumped on it, and we gave him some sketches and some things that I'm an okay visual artist, but he flipped it out, and it looks really cool. So yeah, it's nice to just kind of know those people, to network
Yeah.
with. And I had a bunch of friends come in and do like the voiceovers for the different actors and the different parts. Um, and help me with the production. And so earlier when I said do it by myself, I mean, the concept and a lot of it, yes, but I did have a lot of help from friends that just thought it was cool and wanted to get involved. So that was really nice.
Well, that's where I love hearing. I mean, it's cool when somebody can do it all on their own, but I'm always impressed. I feel like it's equally impressive to find somebody that knows what they do well, and they write the scaffolding, they write the outline, and then they hire or elicit response and participation from people that can do those other little pieces way better at a higher level for them. And kind of, it's why like you're a guitar player, but you're probably not as good of a bass player as you are as a guitar player. So man, you better hire a bass player for that good tune, right? I mean, maybe you are, I don't know. Some people are great bass players too, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah, just knowing how to get 100%. I don't want to half-ass anything, So yeah, I just reached out to the best of everybody I knew that did these things. And the guy that did the bass playing is my friend Matthew Dennis. He actually did bass guitar, mixed it, and did the narration voiceover. So he was like a huge part of it as well. And I know him through playing with Diamante. So yeah, and it's just a wide world of people we know that I was able to call on all these great talents. So pretty cool.
Well, the mix sounds great. The production sounds great. Your playing is off the hook, dude. Like that's what I was just that the thing. So I have to just say I'm gonna like just blow you up a little bit. Like for those people that haven't seen Neil live, like doing his own thing. It's one thing to see Neil do to work with Orianthi and Dave Stewart and stuff, but I've seen just enough of you doing your own thing, and I know the passion that you have, and I know that like I'll just equate it again to like our being fans of Pantera and how we saw them, play live and do all this stuff. That it really translates to how your body language and how you present yourself on stage. You've got great sense of stage presence and playing for the crowd. And when I think about what I'm hearing on this new project, I'm like, man, I would just love to see you shred these melodic licks. There's so many great melodies and lead lines all throughout, and how it kind of intersperses with this storyline it was just a really pleasant surprise for me, because it's like, oh, cool, man, this is unique. It feels original, and there's just, so for a musician like myself that loves guitar, and it helps that I know you, but like I'm hooked. I'm on, like, where's the next chapter, bro? Like, and I need to get the comic book. So I didn't recognize that. So I'll have to, if those are available still, I would still like to get a copy of that so that I could check it out.
Yeah, you can get it on my website. I'll shoot you the link, and you can. What I did was get the tracks, the 4 tracks separately. You can listen to them all separately on streaming platforms, but on my website, I put up a link to where you can listen to the tracks all together as one long thing. So it's like a 20-minute track of the whole album, and it comes with a comic book too. So it's like an all-inclusive. It's a good thing to, like, even if you don't have the comic book in front of you, I feel like having it all as one long song, you can put it on when you're driving somewhere. And it's a bit like you remember when Dream Theater put out not Images and Words, what was the long 20-minute one? Change of Seasons.
Change of Seasons, yeah.
It was one 20-minute song, where I guess I could have gone Rush, but like one long song that just kind of takes you on this journey. And I think that's a cool idea.
That's actually probably maybe the closest thing to equate this project to, in a weird way, even though you don't sound like Dream Theater. Thankfully, because there's already Dream Theater, right? Like, we don't need another one. But yeah, like the narration kind of, in a way, like, would be, I remember my favorite album still is Awake. Like, I'll never not feel like Awake is not like my favorite album, but where some of the sample type narration stuff that Dream Theater would use to help move their stories along, it kind of seems somewhat familiar, and like you cross it with like a RoboCop or something more dystopian and futuristic.
A lot of people were saying Blade Runner.
Yes, that was what I was reaching for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's interesting too, I just as a side note, was that in the narration, I can't remember which track it was, might have been Clones or I don't know, but the part of it was like the conversation between the characters was like, oh, everybody's getting these implants, everybody's getting, trying to, but not everybody gets the twist, right? And like, which was like must be the side effect from some of this body alteration that's happening in this futuristic world. And one of the things that gets dropped is like, you can change sexes, you can change races, like, or something like that. So it's like there was this like hint of potential of a movement of transraciality in the future, like it could be part robot and any kind of anything, and so that's an interesting concept and thing that doesn't really get discussed much these days, but you could see where we're at from here, how it could potentially move towards that, right?
Absolutely, and that's it. Even though it's a story about the future, it was inspired by things that are kind of happening now. People were able to change so much about themselves, and there's also so much conflict based on our differences that I thought, there's more to this story. Like, how is that scenario going to play out in the long run with humanity, right? So I tried to go a little deep without going too far in, but like hint at it, provoke thought, like we were saying. So,
yeah, good job at that. Good job, because it definitely does that trick. I think you did a good job of writing the line there with that.
Yeah, I felt like, and originally the script was so long. It was like a movie script. So Whitney was like, "We got to pare this down." So she helped just get the important bits. Sometimes I think, and you'll get this, sometimes as a creative mind, we're wired a little different than a lot of people, and we think in these terms, but the way that other people will digest that, sometimes you need to trim the fat and figure out how are people going to get what you're trying to say. So it's good to have other people to bounce these ideas off of, because otherwise it would have been an epic, like 3-hour thing. So.
I definitely recognize that in myself too. I definitely, as I've been writing like more, just like I've been writing more and doing more hip hop projects and stuff with a friend and doing stuff for myself, that I come up with these big concepts, and I'm like, oh, so this concept, and it seems apparent to me, but then as I share it with certain people, I'm like, I guess I got to explain this. And if I have to explain it to you, then I don't know if that it stands on its own, like, yeah, those type of thoughts around creation. So
it's tough, communication is the key. And, what we lack in words, we try to do musically. Um, and, I'm glad we have that. It's funny, sometimes things like that on the flip side of it, the communication sometimes can be hard for creative people to, well, let's say normal people, I don't know. But on the flip side, what we do isn't something that's natural to everyone. Not everybody hears notes or can create music. They enjoy it, but they don't know where to start with it. So it's interesting because it's so natural to guys like us, but that's what makes it special.
Yeah, like I will be obsessing over. I'm like, oh, I picked this beat and this particular thing, everything because it's energetically in alignment with the lyrics and all the stuff. And like my friends, like, that's cool, man. But like, no, I mean, three people might get that, or might care about that. I'm glad that you care about them. It's cool that there's a story behind it. But you know, if wide appeal is what you're looking for, then you have to jump in. You have to kind of edit it all down and find the real gems and use those pieces to move your story along, so to speak, right? And but it's cool that you have like a big script outside of this, because man, maybe this thing goes somewhere, and they're like, hey, we're gonna make a movie, like an animated movie out of this.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I got more material, friend.
Hey, folks, if you're listening, yeah, buy it up. Let's do this. Yeah, I would love
Yeah,
that. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, because anime, like we said, that culture and animation and everything, it's so huge now. And I think it always has been, but it's just gotten bigger and bigger. And video games is another part of it. They're so huge now. I mean, we grew up with 8-bit Mario, and now they look like real life. It's crazy. If we'd have seen that when we were kids, everyone would have flipped out. They'd have thought it was from Mars, you know?
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, so the whole sci-fi culture thing is that's a big part of, I feel like, who I am along with music. It's always been a big interest to me. So anyway,
That's great, man. Well, I'm kudos on that project and bringing it to life, because it's a neat, unique piece, and I encourage anybody listening to go check out Neil's 4 tunes that are up that are all about the story of Roe. And is it neilswanson.com?
neilswansonofficial.com. Yeah.
Okay, official.com. Yeah, so that you can check out all of the music together as like a 20-minute story and grab the comic book and the whole deal. Um, yeah, I'd love to, in switching gears, I'd love to, if you have a couple of your latest guitars, show off a couple of things that you're all stoked with, because I know you've been playing some kind of more metal guitars with Tommy. So what do you got to show us?
So, for those of you who've followed me for a while at all, like, I've been playing Charvel for a number of years. This is like one of my main ones, 6-string super strat, basically. And I'd played strats forever. And you knew me when I was just playing modded strats. And Charvel stuck out to me because they were like, oh, these are the same kind of classic Fender look that I love, but they had all the modern features, and I didn't have to put a bunch of time and money into modding them. They were just good to go. Like, a lot of them are just stock. I just use them how they send them, and they're great. But I got this call from Tommy, and like, okay, well, most of our songs are in drop G. Oh, crap. Okay. So 7-string guitar, extended range, anything isn't something I've done a lot of. I mean, I've always gone like drop D because, Pantera. But 7-string was kind of different to me. I tried it twice before in my life. I got an original. I was at a guitar shop up in Seattle in like early 2000s, and I found a original Ibanez Universe, the Steve Vai with the swirl paint, and it was original like 90s Universe, right? And the guy wanted like $500 for it because at the time, like, I think that just wasn't what everybody was doing. So I grabbed it up, and I can't. So I turned around and I sold it, and I made like $2,000 off of it because, somebody wanted it, but it wasn't for me. But this time, okay, I'm going to do it. So my friends at Charvel or Fender, well, Fender owns Charvel, Jackson, the whole Fender family, and they sent me this guy. So this is the Misha Mansour Juggernaut, and this is a very cool guitar, and this is my first 7-string in terms of what I've been doing with Tommy, and it's a really cool guitar. It's cut a lot different than the Strat style bodies, like a way deeper cutaway, and one of the biggest differences I noticed while playing it was the nut width is it's a little smaller. The strings are a little closer together than I'm used to. So on top of having the additional string, that was an adjustment for me. but it's super comfortable for certain things. It kind of reminds me of how Music Man guitars, the spacing or something just seems smaller to me than what I'm used to.
Yeah, that's cool. It's definitely I've definitely picked up guitars where it's either wider or more narrow, and you're like, wait a second, this is gonna take me a minute to like readjust because all my muscle memory is like a little bit off.
Yeah, yeah. Like after a day or two of playing it, I'm like, okay, this is great. But it did take me a second to kind of adjust to it. But this was kind of the first one that I ended up with, and shortly after that, we decided that with Tommy, we were going to go to um, more specific like black and gold theme. You know, as far as like all the marketing and the stage and everything. So like a black and gold. Okay, so started looking at guitars and figured out that the Angel Vivaldi 7 string, the Charvel 7 string, which is the only 7 they currently make, black and gold, and it's an awesome guitar. And you know, Tommy and Angel go back as well as some of the other guys in Tommy's crew. They've known each other a long time, so let's just get on the phone with him. They call up Angel like, hey, you know, Neil's playing guitar with us, and he's a Charvel artist, and we just thought, you know, this might be a cool guitar for him. And Angel's like, dude, yeah, I would love to see him playing that. So Angel and Mike Tempesta over there at Charvel, and you know, we all just kind of conferred, and they got one out to me, and I got to tell you, man, this is like by far my new favorite guitar. This thing is super sick.
Oh man, it is so dope.
It's so up my alley too. You know, like it's the Strat thing and the spacings. You know, more kind of what I'm used to, I guess, but with extra string. Got the cool reverse head. Um, but it's a dinky body, kind of like what I'm used to again, the maple fretboard. It's just super me. And I really, really love it. And thank you to Charvel and Angel specifically for helping us out with this one. So there you go, black and gold, super classy.
That's so cool, Neil. It does suit you a lot better, for sure. When I see that, it's like an extension of what you've already been doing for a while, and it's you know, that reverse headstock. There's something about that little the thing that does it for me. It kind of goes with like your hair. I don't know what it is. Like there's something about.
Geometric really works.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you does the Misha have the Misha's signature pickups in it too?
Yeah, they're I think on that one, because that's the Pro Series model, they're Jackson versions of his pickups. So does he have like a signature pickup with somebody?
Yeah, Bare Knuckle makes his like top of the line. He's got two different signatures. So I was gonna say if it were his actual signatures compared, I'd like to hear your thoughts around the comparison between those and the Angel Vivaldi DiMarzios, right? But
No, those are like some Jackson pickups, and they're pretty decent. A lot of times, first thing I do when is I'll replace pickups with Duncans, which I've been using for a long time. But lately, I've just kind of been rolling with what they put in there, just because there's a reason they put it in there, because it suited how they heard it. So the pickups that are in that one are actually pretty great. And these are DiMarzios, which, like I said, I've mostly used Duncans, but these are also really great. I like the way they respond, and you know, the gold is really cool. So I don't feel like I need to do a lot to this guitar. Um, you know what? Also, I was talking to a friend lately. He uses the Fishman fluids pickups and everything, and yeah, like I had a set of those in one guitar once, and I thought they were cool, but I don't know if maybe I just didn't understand the wiring options. So I think I might try some of those again and do some different things. You know, as you know, pickups can change your tone so much in a guitar. So
big time.
I don't know. It's time to play around with some stuff. But this has been the main axe here lately to answer your question.
And is that do you have the trim floated on that, or is it kind of sitting on the body?
Okay, so I'm not a big tremolo guy, particularly once I started doing more like hired gun stuff. I needed stability rather than parlor tricks, right? So I started blocking the bridges on all my guitars. So recently, I'm glad you asked. I actually reached out to FU Tone, and they make all the upgrade parts for like bridges and Floyd Rose guitars and everything. And they got me out some parts, and I did the trim stabilizer, the trim block. So this thing is blocked; it doesn't move, and it was such an easy install. And I've also got some parts that I'm going to install on a Floyd guitar, like a new block and some better string lock screws and titanium parts. So I'm really excited to upgrade that guitar, and also got this one. And so big ups to FU Tone, because they actually were really easy to put in and made a big difference.
Very cool. That's cool to know.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that. And congratulations on those guitars.
Mhm. And I got to point out also, you might see behind me, I've got the Rhodes V on the wall. So that's a like a early '90s, maybe late '80s Jackson Rhodes V, and that was my first good guitar I got when I was like 15, and it's been with me forever. And so getting with the Fender brands like Charvel and Jackson and Fender, it's always been up my alley. So this was a kind of a cool thing because I already had this history with them. So I'm definitely enjoying that aspect of it too. It's kind of like when people get tattoos, they have this story that means something to them. So it is with us. A lot of time guitars are that same vibe. So
Yeah, we like our stories. We like our nostalgia and how we got here. And I mean that's what this whole podcast is about. It's like, here, tell me some stories about how you got here and do the thing and why you do. Tell me why you do the thing, because it's like we want to have the dots connected, and if I know why you're doing what you're doing, then it somehow enamors me more with your story and with your trajectory, right? I think that's part of it, at least.
it is because, like you said, there's these guitars are such an extension of who we are. It makes sense, and there's a reason that all these iconic players play the instruments they do. It's not because somebody paid them a bunch of money. It's not like a sports thing where Nike, hey, here's $1 million, wear our shoes. These guys play these guitars because it's what inspires them. Oh, I got another one for you. Sometimes you got to have a little calm to the storm. It can't be metal all the time. I mean, it can be, but it's nice to have a little diversity. So we've got the Fender Acoustasonic.
Oh, cool, man. You digging that thing?
Dude, at first, when I saw them promoting these things real heavily, I was like, it's cool, but it might be like gimmicky or whatever. And then, I got this one because I was playing kind of a cheapo old acoustic and we kept getting feedback through the monitors. So we picked this up to help eliminate that. And I don't pick up a lot of guitars nowadays and say, wow, but dude, wow. It's really, really cool. It's thin, it's lightweight. You can go electric, as the pickup, but the acoustic tones in this thing are insane. It sounds huge. And but it plays like an electric. It's really great. Really, really great.
That's really cool. Yeah, they definitely hit it hard with that marketing campaign, because like everybody on the planet that was a reasonable guitar player showed up with one. So I
Yeah.
mean, hey, that's if you got the money to throw around and give out guitars, man, like, yeah, that's how you get people to see it. Yeah, that's great.
Sonics, yeah. But that's it. I couldn't see it, so I thought let's give it a try, and it's really cool. And I've seen a few things like this on the market, and I think that's where the future of guitars are headed. People are getting more, and you tell me, you've been in the business a long time. It seems like things are getting more efficient, and particularly for travel and stuff. Like another thing I'm using, I'm just going to talk gear the whole time now. Okay, I've been using the Boss GT 1000. Right, this has been my pedal board for years now, and I love it. Since it came out, the guys at Boss got one over to me, and it's been great. You go straight into the PA. And I also love my orange amps. I'm an orange artist, and I love them to death. But sometimes when you just got to do those quick fly out gigs and you don't have an amp at your disposal, these are great. But what did they do to up the game past that? They made a mini. So this last
Oh,
Tommy, this is the GT 1000 Core, and it's the same thing, same power and everything, processing power, but it's just fewer knobs. And it's funny because sometimes, how it is with pedal boards, when you have a bunch of things and a bunch of buttons, you feel like you have to use them all. So you start assigning things and you have all these things that maybe I don't even really need to use those. So when I had only three, I realized, I really don't need that many patches. I just the ones I need. It's like trying to play
that's
a song with three strings instead of six.
right. You get the when you reduce the amount of options, you tend to get more creative with the handful of things that you have, right? Versus trying all these different things out and then kind of making a mess or muddying the water a little bit. That's cool, man. I didn't know that they came out with that many. I'm a fractal guy. I have my fractal 3, and yeah, I think you're right. Just to further your point, that the cool thing about modern technology and us getting older and wiser and the whole thing is that we have all these time. We've had all this time to see where, like I started off with a PV Bandit, like an old like PV 112 or whatever, and a DOD death metal pedal. Like I think that was what I had. I had the blood splatter on it and shit. Like that's, and I was cranking the gain. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was cranking the gain on the PV and cranking the gain on that, and just like all this feedback. It was like, it was like I just want to go big with this, but yeah, so much of what's happening in the guitar market, right, happens to be looking at the trends, and a lot of it started with Eddie Van Halen. I mean, if we really are honest with ourselves, right, like that dude started modern strats in his garage or wherever he did it, and then everybody was like, oh, that's kind of like why Charvel is a thing. That's why all these other things are, they had to have different kind of categories, and here we are 20, 30, 40 years later, and it's like, well, okay, well, there is the category. Like Fender can now just be basically Fender. Charvel can be the modded version of that. Jackson can be the metal version of that, the full-on metal version of it. And yeah, and so with the fly gig stuff, man, that's just the best. When you find something that's compact and does the trick. Because like for the longest time, I don't know if you probably remember. I mean, it's like for a long time, you didn't dare record guitar direct. That wasn't a thing you did.
No,
right?
No, that wasn't a thing for a long time. You had to have the amps and the right mics and the right preamps, and you had to have all this hardware.
Yeah.
A lot of space, and you had to really know what you were doing. And I'm not saying that's still not a thing, and there's a lot of argument about that. But man, for guys like me, I've done plenty of sessions this last year at home using Neural DSP plugins in my MacBook, and they sounded great.
Yeah, we live in an age for a while now, for a long while. I mean, since the line, I think line 6 kind of broke the game for direct stuff, right? And then like Boss was always, neck and neck with a lot of stuff, but it was like I remember seeing I went to go see Meshuggah on the Nothing tour, right, in Seattle, and they had no amps. They were just line 6 out to the front of house with in-ears, and I was like, the future has arrived, and they sounded devastating. Of course, I mean, that's just who they are. But I was like, okay, so do I copy them, or could be, or I was kind of confused. I'm like, I'm in the process of trying to own another Soldano amp or something, but like, should I buy a Pod Pro? I don't know what to do here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And they had this massive tone from these boxes. And I think a lot of it just comes down to vibe. There's a certain energy or vibe you get from different kinds of gear. I read a thing once of it was an interview with John Petrucci, and he was talking about, he's got the fractal stuff. I think he's still using it. This was a couple of years back, but he said he still had a drawer in his rack that had a couple analog pedals in it. Not that the fractal didn't do those things great, but he just liked the vibe of turning knobs just to get it a certain way. It's just a vibe thing creatively.
Yeah, that's been the funny trend to watch, because I remember kind of coming of age in the 80s, late 80s, going into the 90s, and all this solid state stuff that was supposed to replace tubes, right? Like you had all this ADA preamps and all these different things that came out. And then it was like going into the 90s, the grunge started happening. They're like, no way, bro, you got to get glass in your, you got to burn some glass to like be a real man. And like, you don't play solos like we play emotional, like 1 or 2 note solos. And then it swung, the pendulum swung back that way, right? And then it's like, while the grunge thing left and metal was coming back in, and you got to have tube amps alongside your metal again. It wasn't just all this solid state, but then it's you've seen this thing where the technology really gets really good, and it's like these Boss GT 1000s, the fractals, the line 6s, and you're like, wow, this is so cool, and everybody dives into it and it works. But then like, okay, man, it's so much deep editing. I just want to turn knobs on an analog amp again, and so that and that's, I do both. I have my VHT Pitbull over here. When I get tired of looking at a screen, I'm like, man, I'm just going to turn on a thing that like warms up, and I can turn off the standby and shred,
Yeah, and that's exactly true. Like I'll plug into the orange, into the rock reverb, and crank it, and it's just, there's a certain thing about it, So it's just about vibe, and some people that aren't, to touch what we said earlier, creatively minded, they don't understand that. Sometimes it's form over function. There's a vibe. So that's very important when you're trying to create something from nothing. So yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about guitar picks. I want to know about, I know a little bit about your guitar pick stuff because we've worked together at Jim Dunlop and all that, but I'm curious about like where the relationship with the guitar pick began. Was there anybody in your world that encouraged you to play a certain kind of pick? Do you remember anything about your first couple of picks? And how did you get to play what you play now?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. When you first start playing guitar, you might get like one of those packages where it's got the guitar and the little amp, and it comes with a set of strings and some picks. And that's kind of your introduction to like all the stuff. So we were talking about PV a minute ago, right? I had that same setup. My mom bought me like I think, what's the PV Strat? The PV Predator, I think, or it used to be. I don't know what it is now, but it was like a PV Strat. Came with the little Bandit amp and, and a little bag of picks and some strings. So the picks that came with it were the really glossy, like I think they had like some thins, mediums, and heavies. Just like the Fender style picks. I'm not sure what that material is that they use, but they're
I think
real
it's celluloid usually.
celluloid, yeah, and they're really slick, and they come in a bunch of colors. So oh, cool. So I think I just sort of gravitated towards the heavy one because when you're a teen, you're like going heavy, and it just felt right to me as far as the thickness. And I used that for a while, but then when you're first playing your first few concerts, when you're playing guitar, you get really sweaty, you're super nervous, and I kept slipping and dropping my picks because the celluloid was just a little too slick, right? So I started looking at other options, and you go to Guitar Center, and they would always have the trays, all the different ones. You could grab one of these, one of these. I just got a bunch of them. I tried some of the ones that had the little thumbprint in them. You remember those? What were those called? They were purple. And they had a thumbprint.
Big Stubby.
Yes. Yeah. I had some of those and all these other kinds of picks. And some of them, I think for a little while, I switched to using really thick ones like 2 millimeters or something, to where they just had no give, no budge. And I thought that was the way to go because these are probably going to help me to play really heavy. But I think that I ended up being a very percussive player with I come down pretty hard and I was just breaking strings right and left. So I did two things. I switched to 10 gauge strings from nines, and I went back a step to just like a heavy, like 0.88. And but again, the celluloid ones were too slippery, so I needed something with a little grip, but I didn't like texture on my picks. I didn't want like the little cross things that I could feel. It just kind of messed me up. But I needed it to be a little more slip resistant, so I started using the classic Tortex, right? And to this day, this is what I use, and it's the right thickness. It has a little bit of give for the feel, but it's thick enough to where it stays rigid enough when I need a lot of fast picking. And the material, what are these made out of?
So that's they're the Tortex. I forget what the actual material is called in its base form, but they're cut out of a sheet. They're stamped out of a sheet and then tumbled, right? And Dunlop they pioneered that. They color coded, and were like the first pick company, as far as I know, to put a gauge or a indication of like how thick it was, right? But the gauge specifically, and yeah, that green pick, man, it's so iconic. Like I can't even tell you. Like I played that same pick forever. I oftentimes will play that pick, but I play it in the flow format, right? So it's a little bit different shape.
Right.
But yeah, I'm a 73 guy now. I've tried all the gauges, and I still play all these different gauges. I'm a pick guy, so I got all these super thick picks, all these artisan picks, and people send me stuff from Germany or Spain and stuff, and like somebody put my logo on a pick, and I'm like, that's so cool, dude. But always go back to the 73 Flow Tortex, and that's been, and I've been using I got my Siege logo on there on one side, and I got my little DNA mandala logo on the other side. But that's cool. Yeah, the part of what's beautiful about Tortex too is because of the stamping process. You stamp it out of a sheet, and then it gets the rough edges get tumbled. It still has essentially a square edge on the side, right? So it's not like a smooth edge where like you get a Jazz 3, you get a regular Ultex flow. Most picks that are injection molded are made to have quick release on the strings, so they don't give you much resistance. But these picks, they have a certain resistance to them, and they have a certain rasp, right? So it's not a lot, but it's just enough. When we get addicted to that feel and that kind of, they have a certain tone because of that.
You know, you're so right hand conscious, and I love that because, like I said, I think I'm a very percussive player, and I had to figure out kind of what worked for my picking style. So to hear you talk about it and all these, you know, these intricate details that a lot of people don't think about, a lot of people like pick a pick, but it's really not, and it really changes everything. You know, not just your technique, but the shape of the pick. It's a big deal. I once heard Paul Gilbert say, "This is the gas and this is the steering." So you got to have both, right? So, and it's super true. A lot of guys, they focus so much on running scales, but not enough on their picking, and that's so important. And people talk about my playing sometimes. I'm not trying to like talk myself up, but they say your solos are very clear. There's a lot of clarity, and yeah, I think that just comes from like a lot of focus on that right hand. You know,
Well, they're not wrong, man. I'll echo that statement that that's part of. And what I also I was going to say earlier is I love that you're playing Angel's guitar also, because there's you know, you guys are your own players, but I love, he's such a melodic. It's a good league to be in is what I'm saying. You fit in and should be playing a guitar that is akin to what he would play, because you guys both are very precise players and very melodic players. So I don't know. There's just something that just feels really right about that for the two of you, you know, and the fact that you guys are friends and the whole thing. So that works out. It really works out.
Yeah, well, thank you for including me with him. And I feel like to some degree we're kind of cut from the same rug, you know, with what we like out of tone and guitars, and yeah, so very very cool, and very grateful to him, and you as well for you know, like when you were working with Dunlop and teaming me up, because as I recall, you actually sent me like, hey, try these out. Like you sent me a couple of varieties of picks, and it was interesting to see like, wow, I really play differently with these different things. And I can't remember which one, but there's one that I think I preferred for the acoustic guitar I was playing, but then for the electric, it was always the green Tortex. So, um, and like, you know, a lot of people, I know a lot of metal guys have been using the little jazz picks, and maybe I'm just clumsy, but I drop them every time. I can't hold on to those.
It's a whole nother world, man. I had my buddy Zane back up in Seattle. He gave me, Zane knows Roberta too, because Zane worked at Ampeg. You might have met Zane back in the day. He's a great guitarist, but we worked together. Our desks were close, and I always use those green picks. And he was like, man, he's like, take this little red Jazz 3 home with you for the weekend, and you know, just don't play anything else for the whole weekend, and just acclimate to it, and then, you know, see how you feel about that green pick afterwards. And he ruined me for Tortex for a good couple of years. All I played was Jazz 3 for a while, and I kept going through the different Jazz 3s to try to sort it out. But all these years later, I've circled back around and I'm back home. But there was a while where you couldn't get me off of Jazz 3s. That's all I wanted. But again, like you're saying, it's like I never would have done it without him telling me, don't play anything else for the weekend, because it's like first couple of strokes, you're like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you got to commit to it and really give it a chance. And that's probably something I should do again. I feel like every few years, kind of like your taste buds, every few years things change. Like I used to hate this food, but now I can't get enough. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should try some different picks again for like a whole weekend or something. I should have been doing that this whole last year when we were at home.
It's never too late, man. It's never too late.
True.
Well, I would like to know, I have to close up here in the near future, but I would like to know what you're listening to these days, and if there's any players in particular that you might, maybe that not a lot of people know about, that that you could tell people about to go check out.
Yeah, you know, it's cool. Like we were saying earlier about how for a while metal kind of went out, but then it came back really strong. And it's funny. I always thought like when the music industry started hurting due to streaming, COVID, all these things where it started hurting kind of badly. It was like, okay, well, metal's always been the underdog, so I don't feel like metal was hurting as bad because we were already kind of like you know, like, I'm sorry this hurt your pop artist platinum status, but like for the rest of us, this is kind of where we already were in a way. And live shows were always our bread and butter. So when I look at how metal players and the vibe have changed, you know, it used to be like Motley Crue and GNR where they were like the bad boys. That went to like hip hop and pop artists. They took the bad boy card. So rock started relying on our musicianship and our smarts and our, you know, like, so now you've got all these players that I've been listening to, like Pliny and you know what Tosin is doing and all these guys, and they're very smart players. You know, there's so much virtuosity in it, but it's still very raw and emotional. So I've been listening to a lot of those guys on the more new school side, and I love to see that. But I will always go back to, of course, you know, we talk about Dime and Randy Rhoads and all the greats. Yes, yes, yes. We all love those guys. But a couple dudes that always really inspired me that a lot of people, they're not like overlooked, but they don't talk about as often, was a lot of the early Suicidal stuff. Rocky George, big fan of.
Yeah, Rocky.
I don't know why a lot of people like that stuff was super melodic and it was so cool because Suicidal kind of always had this sort of G thing going on, and but there were still tons of solos and it was metal at the same time. For me, that was rap rock before rap rock because it had that attitude, and Rocky's solos had all that attitude but also all the feels, you know. So check out some Suicidal, like How I Laugh Tomorrow and I Can't Even Smile Today, all that kind of stuff. Revolution, what was that? Lights, Camera, Revolution. Those are great albums and great guitar playing. So there you
I
go.
wonder what Rocky's up to these days, because I know he came back in the band for a hot minute, and then I'm like, because he was one of the dudes that was like the fabled, like I never got to see him live. I seen Suicidal a handful of times, but it was never with Rocky. And I always he always had like the overhand, like he was doing cool like two hands over the top, doing some tapping stuff and kind of piano-ish, like I don't know, but I never got to see that live. I just wonder what he's up to these days.
Yeah, that's yeah. And there's not a ton of like things to watch on YouTube. I've kind of searched them up, and there's some live shows, but there's not a lot of what we're used to seeing now, or like playthroughs and clinics and things. He didn't do a lot of that, and it was a different time. We didn't have that. And I feel super old when I try to tell some people, like younger people, about that. We just didn't have that at the time. We're like, what do you mean? And I try to
You're like you're like, kids, I hate to break this to you, but I'm older than the internet.
I that's bad. But technology has grown so much in recent years, and but you know, just to say what we were saying a minute ago, some of these newer players, the way they've utilized it, you know, guys like Pliny and Tosin and stuff, that maybe wouldn't have been as popular had they come out a while back. Like the timing was right with the industry and the technology and the style and the social elements. It's like a Super Bowl team. Like everything has to be just right. And these guys in their own right are super famous, even though it's not like they're, you know, pop stars. But dude, that's always been the thing about metal. It's got this whole underground thing. You may never hear it on the radio, but it's a thing, and a lot of people love it.
Yeah, it's an interesting time with what you're describing here. It makes me think about, I know that, multi-track recording has been around for long enough to be able to splice things in and not have to do everything in one take. But I think the further you go back, the thing that younger players need to realize is that most of the time, the further you go back with these players that we all talk about, the more they had to do what they do in one take. You know, the closer to it, and a lot of times it was that, and so it was. You got like artists like Steve Vai, even like when he started out doing stuff with Zappa and the Zappa years and stuff like that. Like you have been, yes, there was the ability to splice in, but like if you didn't, you didn't try to like go into the studio going, all right, I'm just gonna do a bunch of takes, and we're gonna comp together a couple things, and I'll learn it afterwards. That's not what we did, Like that's not how it worked. You came in, you might do a bunch of takes. That's great. That's beautiful. That's fine. But you got to choose one.
Yeah.
Usually, right?
You come with your guns loaded. Yeah.
Yeah. So in some ways, I think that that could be missing, a missing element for some people in this day and age. Although I think that the kids, so to speak, have it better because us kids have it better than our predecessors because of that opportunity to come in with a general feeling and oftentimes it's not even coming into a real studio, it's coming into our home studio, and well, with a MacBook or something, you know, and we can do it as many times as we want, and we can, you know, edit things. But you could come in with a general vibe, do 10 takes, and be like, oh, you know what, the first part of that and the second part of that, they work out. You splice them together, and then you go back and you learn that thing. And so we have the opportunity to kind of refine things more than our forefathers, so to speak, than, because they didn't have that. They just had to come in, like you said, guns loaded, and all right, man, get her done.
Yeah. You know, and you do what you got to do to create a good album. But I really still think live is the true test of art. You know, like it should be like sports. You know, like I want an element of, is he going to catch it? Is he not? Is he going to nail that solo? Is he going to sing that high note? There should be an element of what if. And I think that goes for any kind of art, you know, even visual art. Everybody can be a good photographer now with their iPhone, but nothing is going to replace the beauty of witnessing it in person.
Right. No, that's a good point. Do you think so, like for you, when because you have ultimate domain over your own solo material, do you, when you perform, so you create something on your canvas, and then when you go live, are you predominantly looking to recreate that note for note, vibe for vibe, or do you like to stray a little bit and kind of give the live experience a little something different? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, usually I like to do things pretty close to what you hear on the album, with the exception of there might be some runs where I embellish a little bit, just to give you a little something different, you know. But as long as you hit those main notes people want to hear, the sing along notes, that's important. But the rest of the time, I think it's cool to extend a section or do a different run, or like Dime, we keep referencing Dime. He would do things where he would like skip a whole run, and instead he just hit some one crazy harmonic, like, wow, that was even better than the album, which was a crazy one note for live. Just wow, you know. So
Yeah.
knowing how to channel in that wow in a live scenario that maybe doesn't work on the album. There, you know how it is. There's some things that work in a listening scenario that don't live. So figuring that out and finding that balance, I think that's what experience from guys our age, I think that's what affords you. Sometimes you find young players that have that. That's amazing. But sometimes I think you have to build up to that.
Yes, because it's interesting, because like being raised on a guy like Dimebag is a great example of it, because I mean, I've seen him 6 times live, and I feel like at this point in history, I feel like, man, I didn't really truly know how lucky I was, because nobody knew how things would end, right? So, but seeing him live so many times and watching a crap ton of videos, you know, and all that stuff too, you'd hear him do this love solo a little different
Yeah.
every other night, you know. It's like, it's the main parts are there, but he liked to kind of veer off a little bit and do these little things, and that's a certain kind of calm confidence, and really be like, it ain't no thing, dog, I'm gonna throw this out, we're good, you know.
Yeah.
So something different for you tonight, you know. Whereas the younger you are, in a lot of ways, I don't want to say it's not all based on age, but I think that maybe the less experience, right? It might be, oh, I gotta hold this up and show them that I can pull off the thing that's on the album,
Yeah.
right? And it's more of that proving ground, and then eventually, maybe you get to evolve to like giving a different solo each night. I don't know, but
And I think knowing your fans too, like I think some artists, if they are to veer too far off of the album, the fans aren't happy. They want to hear exactly what they want to hear. But yeah, sometimes, especially in a group like Pantera, where it was meant to be imperfect, it was meant to be a little ugly and crazy at times. You know, that's what the fans wanted, so it worked perfectly. You know.
yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing some cool stories and telling us about how you got to where you're at. I'm really excited about what comes next for you, you know, and all the different capacities, both with rocking these two great gigs side by side, and I'm really interested in this solo project and how that evolves, and who picks it up and makes the movie out of it. I want to know, like, I want to be there, and Yeah, man. Just thank you for everything. Thanks for the friendship through the years. And
Absolutely. Thank you.
please tell the lady I said hi. And if you see Roberta anytime soon, give her a hug for me, please.
I will. I try to get out there and see her pretty often, regardless of if I'm working or not, and if I'm ever up your way in Chico, I'll come say hey.
Yeah, anytime, man. You and the lady are welcome. I got an extra bedroom, extra mountain bikes. We got swimming up in the canyon and lots of places to have drinks and good food around here. So I'll take care of you.
Healthy body, healthy mind, dude. That's one of the things I've always loved about you. Good balance.
I do my best. I definitely do the beer and I do the yoga. Like. All right, Neil. Well, thanks again, man. Hope you have the best day ever, dude. And let's be in touch, okay?
Absolutely, man. Take care.
Players Pick Podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chrys Johnson.